Mel Brooks.
Mel Brooks is an American film director, screenwriter, composer, lyricist, comedian, actor and producer. He is best known as a creator of broad film farces and comic parodies. He began his career as a stand-up comic and as a writer for the early TV variety show Your Show of Shows. He became well known as part of the comedy duo with Carl Reiner, the 2,000-year-old man. In middle age he became one of the most successful film directors of the 1970s, with many of his films being among the top 10 money-makers of the year that they were released. His most well-known films include The Producers, The 12 Chairs, Blazing Saddles, Young Frankenstein, Silent Movie, High Anxiety, History of the World, Part 1, Spaceballs and Robin Hood, Men in Tights. More recently he has had a smash hit on Broadway with a musical adaptation of his first film, The Producers. He was married to the actress Anne Bancroft from 1964 until her death in 2005. Brooks is a member of the short list of entertainers with the distinction of having won an Emmy, a Grammy, an Oscar and a Tony Award. He received the 41st AFI Life Achievement Award in June 2013. 3 of his films ranked in the American Film Institute's list of the top 100 comedy films of all time, all of which ranked in the top 20 of the list, Blazing Saddles at number 6, The Producers at number 11, and Young Frankenstein at number 13.
Early life.
Brooks was born in Brooklyn, New York, a son of James Kaminsky and his wife, Kate, née Brookman. His father's family were German Jews from the Baltic Sea port of Danzig, modern Gdansk, Poland. His mother's family were Ukrainian Jews from Kiev. He had 3 older brothers, Irving, Lenny, and Bernie. His father died of kidney disease at 34 when Brooks was 2 years old. Brooks has said of his father's death, that there's an outrage there. I may be angry at God, or at the world, for that. And I'm sure a lot of my comedy is based on anger and hostility. Growing up in Williamsburg, I learned to clothe it in comedy to spare myself problems, like a punch in the face. Brooks was a small, sickly boy who often was bullied and picked on by his classmates. He was taught by Buddy Rich, who had also grown up in Williamsburg, how to play the drums and started earning money at it when he was 14. After attending Abraham Lincoln High School for a year, Brooks graduated from Eastern District High School and then spent a year at Brooklyn College as a psychology major before being drafted into the Army. He attended the Army Specialized Training Program conducted at the Virginia Military Institute, although not actually as a VMI cadet, and served in the United States Army as a corporal in the 1104 Engineer Combat Battalion, 78th Infantry Division defusing landmines during World War II.
Career. Early career in Your Show of Shows.
After the war, Brooks started working in various Borscht Belt resorts and nightclubs in the Catskill Mountains as a drummer and pianist. Around this time he changed his professional name to Mel Brooks. Brooks is from his mother's maiden name Brookman, after being confused with the well-known Borscht Belt trumpet player Max Kaminsky. After a regular comic at one of the nightclubs was too sick to perform one night, Brooks started working as a stand-up comic, telling jokes and doing movie star impressions. He also began acting in summer stock in Red Bank, New Jersey and did some radio work. He eventually worked his way up to the comically aggressive job of Tumblr, master entertainer, at Gross Singers, one of the Borscht Belt's most famous resorts. Brooks found more rewarding work behind the scenes, becoming a comedy writer for television. In 1949 his friend Sid Caesar hired Brooks to write jokes for the NBC series The Admiral Broadway Review, paying him $50 a week. In 1950, Caesar created the revolutionary variety comedy series Your Show of Shows and hired Brooks as a writer along with Carl Reiner, Neil Simon, Danny Simon, and head writer Mel Tokin. The show was an immediate hit and has been influential to all variety and sketch comedy TV shows since. Carl Reiner, as creator of The Dick Van Dyke Show, based Maury Amsterdam's character Buddy Sorrell on Brooks. Likewise the 1982 film My Favorite Year is loosely based on Brooks's experiences as a writer on the show and an encounter with aging Hollywood actor Errol Flynn. Neil Simon's 1993 play Laughter on the 23rd Floor is also loosely based on the production of the show, and the character Iris Stone is based on Brooks. Your Show of Shows would end in 1954 when performer Imogene Coca left to host her own show. Caesar then created Caesar's Hour with most of the same cast and writers, including Brooks and adding Larry Gelbart. Caesar's Hour ran from 1954 until 1957. In 1957, Brooks wrote the book for his first Broadway musical Shin Bone Alley.
The 2,000-year-old man and Get Smart.
Brooks and co-writer Reiner had become fast friends and began to casually improvise comedy routines when they weren't working. Reiner would play the straight man interviewer who would set Brooks up as anything from a Tibetan monk to an astronaut. As Reiner explained, in the evening we'd go to a party and I'd pick a character for him to play. I never told him what it was going to be. On one of these occasions Reiner's suggestion was a 2,000-year-old man who had witnessed the crucifixion of Jesus Christ, who came in the store but never bought anything, had been married several hundred times and had over 42,000 children, and not one comes to visit me. At first Brooks and Reiner would only perform the routine for friends, but by the late 1950s it had gained a cult status in New York City. Kenneth Donan saw the comedy duo perform at a party in 1959 and wrote that Brooks was the most original comic improviser I had ever seen. In 1960, Brooks moved from New York to Hollywood. He and Reiner began performing the 2,000-year-old man act on The Steve Allen Show. Their performances led to the release of the comedy album 2,000 Years with Carl Reiner and Mel Brooks that sold over 1 million copies in 1961. They eventually expanded their routine with 2 more albums in 1961 and 1962, a revival in 1973, a 1975 animated TV special and a reunion album in 1998. Brooks adapted the 2,000-year-old man character to create the 2,500-year-old brewmaster for Ballantine beer in the 1960s. Interviewed by Dick Cavett in a series of ads, the brewmaster, in a German accent, as opposed to the 2,000-year-old man's Yiddish accent, said he was inside the original Trojan horse and could have used a 6-pack of fresh air. In 1962, Brooks wrote the Broadway musical All-American. Brooks wrote the play with lyrics by Lee Adams, and music by Charles Strauss. The show starred Ray Bolger as a Southern science professor at a large university who uses the principles of engineering on the college's football team and the team begins to win games. The show was directed by Joshua Logan, whose script doctored the second act and added a gay subtext to the plot. The show ran for 80 performances and received 2 Tony Award nominations. In 1963, Brooks was involved in the animated short film The Critic, a satire of arty, esoteric cinema, conceived by Brooks and directed by Ernest Pintoff. Brooks supplied running commentary as the baffled moviegoer trying to make sense of the obscure visuals. The short film won the Academy Award for Animated Short Film. In 1965, Brooks teamed up with comedy writer Buck Henry to create a comedic TV show about a bumbling James Bond-inspired spy. Brooks explains, "I was sick of looking at all those nice sensible situation comedies. They were such distortions of life. I wanted to do a crazy, unreal comic strip kind of thing about something besides a family. No one had ever done a show about an idiot before. I decided to be the first." The show that Brooks and Henry created was Get Smart, starring Don Adams as Maxwell Smart, Agent 86. This series ran from 1965 until 1970, although Brooks was not involved with its production after the pilot episode. Get Smart was highly rated for most of its production and won 7 Emmy Awards, including Outstanding Comedy Series in 1968 and 1969. Brooks had married actress Anne Bancroft in 1964 and the two lived together in New York City.
Early career as a film director.
For several years Brooks had been toying with a bizarre and unconventional idea about a musical comedy of Adolf Hitler. Brooks explored the idea as a novel and a play before finally writing a script. Eventually he was able to find 2 producers to fund the show, Joseph E. Levine and Sidney Glazier, and made his first feature film, The The producers, in 1968. The film starred Zero Mostel, Gene Wilder, Dick Shawn, Kenneth Mars, Christopher Hewitt, Andreas Voutsinas and Lee Meredith with music by John Morris. The producers was so brazen in its satire that major studios would not touch it, nor would many exhibitors. Brooks finally found an independent distributor who released it as an art film, a specialized attraction. In 1968 Brooks received an Oscar for Best Original Screenplay for the film, beating such writers as Stanley Kubrick and John Cassavetes. The producers became a smash underground hit, first on the nationwide college circuit, then in revivals and on home video. Brooks later turned it into a musical, which became hugely successful on Broadway, receiving an unprecedented 12 Tony Awards. With the moderate financial success of the film, the producers, Glazier, financed Brooks's next film in 1970, The 12 Chairs. Loosely based on a Russian 1928 novel The 12 Chairs by Ilfin Petrov about greedy materialism in post-revolutionary Russia, the film stars Ron Moody, Frank Langella and Dom DeLuise as three men individually searching for a fortune in diamonds hidden in a set of 12 antique chairs. Brooks himself makes a cameo appearance as an alcoholic ex-serf who yearns for the regular beatings of yesteryear. The film was shot in Yugoslavia with a budget of $1.5 million. The film received poor reviews and was not financially successful.
Success as a Hollywood director.
Brooks then wrote an adaptation of Oliver Goldsmith's She Stoops to Conquer, but was unable to sell the idea to any studio and believed that his career was over. In 1972 Brooks met agent David Benjamin, who helped him set up a deal with Warner Brothers to hire Brooks, as well as Richard Pryor, Andrew Bergman, Norman Steinberg and Al Odger, as a script doctor for an unproduced script called Tex-Ex. Eventually Brooks was hired as director for what would become Blazing Saddles, his third film. Blazing Saddles starred Cleavon Little, Gene Wilder, Harvey Korman, Slim Pickens, Madeline Kahn, Alex Karras and Brooks himself, with cameos by Dom DeLuise and Count Basie. The film had music by Brooks and John Morris and received a modest budget of $2.6 million. This film is a satire on the Western film genre and references older films such as Destry Rides Again, High Noon, Once Upon a Time in the West and The Treasure of the Sierra Madre, as well as a surreal scene towards the end of the film referencing the extravagant musicals of Busby Berkeley. Upon its release, Blazing Saddles was the second highest U.S. grossing film of 1974, earning $119.5 million worldwide. Despite mixed reviews, the film was a success with younger audiences. It was nominated for 3 Academy Awards, Best Actress in a Supporting Role for Madeline Kahn, Best Film Editing, and Best Music, Original Song. The film won the Writers Guild of America Award for Best Comedy Written Directly for the Screen, and in 2006 it was deemed culturally, historically or aesthetically significant by the Library of Congress and was selected for preservation in the National Film Registry. Brooks has said that the film has to do with love more than anything else. I mean, when that black guy rides into that old western town and even a little old lady says "Up yours, nigger," you know that his heart is broken. So it's really the story of that heart being mended. When Gene Wilder replaced Gig Young as the Waco Kid, he did so only if Brooks agreed that his next film would be an idea that Wilder had been working on, a spoof of the old Universal Frankenstein films. After the filming of Blazing Saddles was completed, Wilder and Brooks began writing the script for Young Frankenstein and shot the film in the spring of 1974. It starred Wilder, Marty Feldman, Peter Boyle, Terry Garr, Madeline Kahn, Cloris Leachman and Kenneth Mars, with Gene Hackman in a memorable cameo role. Brooks likewise had a cameo role as the father of the little girl who befriended the monster. Composer John Morris again provided the music score, and Universal Monsters film special effects veteran Kenneth Strickfaden worked on the film. Young Frankenstein was the third highest grossing film domestically of 1974, just behind Blazing Saddles. It earned $86 million worldwide and received 2 Academy Award nominations, Academy Award for Writing Adapted Screenplay and Academy Award for Best Sound. It received some of the best reviews of Brooks's career, and even critic Paul Inkel liked the film, saying that Brooks makes a leap up as a director because, although the comedy doesn't build, he carries the story through. Brooks even has a satisfying wind-up, which makes this just about the only comedy of recent years that doesn't collapse. In 1975, at the height of his movie career, Brooks tried TV again with When Things Were Rotten, a Robin Hood parody that lasted only 13 episodes. Nearly 20 years later, in response to the 1991 hit film Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, Brooks mounted another Robin Hood parody in 1993 with Robin Hood, Men in Tights. Brooks's film resurrected several pieces of dialogue from his TV series, as well as from earlier Brooks films. In 1976, Brooks followed up his two hit films with an audacious idea, the first feature-length silent comedy in 4 decades. Silent Movie was written by Brooks and Ron Clark, starring Brooks in his first leading role, Dom DeLuise, Marty Feldman, Sid Caesar, Bernadette Peters and, in cameo roles playing themselves, Paul Newman, Burt Reynolds, James Caan, Liza Minnelli, Anne Bancroft and ironically, Marcel Marceau, who uttered the film's only word of audible dialogue, "Non." Although not as successful as his previous 2 films, Silent Movie was a hit and grossed $36 million. Later that year Brooks was named number 5 on a list of the top 10 box office stars. In 1977, Brooks made a parody of the films of Alfred Hitchcock in High Anxiety. The film was written by Brooks, Ron Clark, Rudy DeLuca and Barry Levinson and was the first movie produced by Brooks himself. It starred Brooks, Madeline Kahn, Cloris Leachman, Harvey Korman, Ron Carey, Howard Morris and Dick Van Patten. The film satirizes such Hitchcock classic films as Vertigo, Spellbound, Psycho, The Birds, North by Northwest, Dial M for Murder and Suspicion. Brooks stars as Professor Richard H. for Harpo, Thorndike, a Nobel Prize-winning psychologist who also happens to suffer from high anxiety. The film was another modest hit for Brooks, earning $31 million and received mixed reviews.
Later film career.
By 1980, Siskel and Ebert called Mel Brooks and Woody Allen the 2 most successful comedy directors in the world today. America's 2 funniest filmmakers. That year, Brooks produced the dramatic film The Elephant Man, directed by David Lynch. Knowing that anyone seeing a poster reading Mel Brooks presents The Elephant Man would expect a comedy, he set up the company Broadway Films. Broadway Films has since produced a number of non-comedy films, including David Cronenberg's The Fly, Francis, and 84 Charing Cross Road, starring Anthony Hopkins and Anne Bancroft, along with comedies, including Richard Benjamin's My Favorite Year, which was partially based on Mel Brooks's real life. Brooks sought to purchase the rights to 84 Charing Cross Road for his wife, Anne Bancroft, for many years. He successfully obtained the rights to the movie and presented them to her as an anniversary gift. In 1981, Brooks joked that the only genres that he had not spoofed were historical epics and biblical spectacles. History of the World Part 1 was a tongue-in-cheek look at human culture from the dawn of man to the French Revolution. The film was written, produced and directed by Brooks with narration by Orson Welles. It starred Brooks, Dom DeLuise, Madeline Kahn, Harvey Korman, Cloris Leachman, Ron Carey, Gregory Hines, Mary Margaret Humes, Pamela Stevenson, Spike Milligan, Sid Caesar and John Hurt. This film was another modest financial hit, earning $31 million. It received mixed critical reviews. Critic Paul Inkel, who for years had been critical of Brooks, said, "Either you get stuck thinking about the bad taste or you let yourself laugh at the obscenity and the humor as you do Buñuel's perverse dirty jokes." As part of the film's soundtrack, Brooks, then aged 55, recorded a rap entitled It's Good to Be the King, a parody of Louis XVI and the French Revolution co-written by Pete Wingfield. It was released as a single and became a surprise dance hit in the United States. In 1983 Brooks produced and starred in, but did not write or direct, a remake of the classic 1942 Ernst Lubitsch film. To Be or Not to Be was directed by Alan Johnson, choreographer, and starred Brooks, Anne Bancroft, Charles Durning, Tim Matheson, Jose Ferrer and Christopher Lloyd. The film was not a financial success, earning only $13 million, but garnered international publicity by featuring a controversial song on its soundtrack To Be or Not to Be, the Hitler rap, satirizing German society in the 1940s with Brooks playing Hitler. Borrowing heavily musically from its Good to Be the King, it was still an unlikely hit, peaking at number 12 on the UK singles chart in February 1984 and number 3 on the Australian singles chart, Kent Music Report, that same year. The second movie Brooks directed in the 80s came in 1987 in the form of Spaceballs, a parody of science fiction, mainly Star Wars. The film starred Bill Pullman, John Candy, Rick Moranis, Daphne Zuniga, Dick Van Patten, Joan Rivers, Dom DeLuise and Brooks himself. In 1989, Brooks, with co-executive producer Alan Spencer, made another attempt at television success with the sitcom The Nut House, which featured Brooks regulars Harvey Korman and Cloris Leachman and was originally broadcast on NBC. But the network only aired 5 of the 11 episodes produced before cancelling the series. In the 1990s, Brooks directed Life Stinks, 1991, Robin Hood, Men in Tights, 1993, and Dracula, Dead and Loving It, 1995. People magazine suggested that anyone in a mood for a hearty laugh couldn't do better than Robin Hood, Men in Tights, which gave fans a classic parody of Robin Hood. Like Brooks's other films, the film is filled with classic one-liners, and even the occasional breaking of the fourth wall. Robin Hood, Men in Tights was Brooks's second time exploring the life of the infamous thief of hearts, the first, as mentioned above, having been with his 1975 TV show, When Things Were Rotten. Life Stinks was a financial and critical failure, but is notable as being the only film that Brooks directed that is neither a parody nor a film about other films or theatre. The 12 Chairs was actually a parody of the original novel. It is also notable as being Brooks's last leading role in a film, as of 2011. Brooks also had a vocal role in the 2005 animated film Robots. He then worked on an animated series sequel to Spaceballs called Spaceballs, the animated series, which premiered on September 21, 2008 on G4 TV. Brooks voiced Albert Einstein in the 2014 animated film Mr. Peabody and Sherman.
Musicals.
One of his most recent successes has been the transference of his film The Producers to the Broadway stage. The show broke the Tony record with 12 wins, a record that had previously been held for 37 years by Hello, Dolly! At 10 wins. Such success translated to a big screen version of the Broadway adaptation remake with actors Matthew Broderick and Nathan Lane reprising their stage roles, in addition to new cast members Uma Thurman and Will Ferrell in 2005. In early April 2006, Brooks began composing the score to a Broadway musical adaptation of Young Frankenstein, which he says is perhaps the best movie ever made. The world premiere was performed at Seattle's Paramount Theatre, between August 7, 2007, and September 1, 2007, after which it opened on Broadway at the former Foxwoods Theatre, then the Hilton Theatre, New York, on October 11, 2007. It earned mixed reviews from the critics. Brooks joked about the concept of a musical adaptation of Blazing Saddles in the final number in Young Frankenstein, in which the full company sings, "Next year, Blazing Saddles." In 2010, Mel Brooks confirmed this, saying that the musical could be finished within a year. No creative team or plan has been announced. He confirmed this again in 2011, on the HBO special Mel Brooks and Dick Cavett Together Again.
Legacy.
Brooks is one of the few artists who have received an Oscar, Emmy, Tony, and Grammy. He was awarded his first Grammy for Best Spoken Comedy Album in 1999 for his recording of The 2000-Year-Old Man in the year 2000 with Carl Reiner. His 2 other Grammys came in 2002 for Best Musical Show Album for the soundtrack of The Producers and for Best Long-Form Music Video for the DVD recording The Producers, a musical romp with Mel Brooks. He won his first of 4 Emmy Awards in 1967 for Outstanding Writing Achievement in Variety for a Sid Caesar special and went on to win 3 consecutive Emmys in 1997, 1998, and 1999 for Outstanding Guest Actor in a Comedy Series for his role of Uncle Phil on Mad About You. He won his 3 Tony Awards in 2001 for his work on the musical, The Producers for Best Musical, Best Original Musical Score, and Best Book of a Musical. Additionally, he won a Hugo Award and a Nebula Award for Young Frankenstein. In a 2005 poll to find the comedian's comedian, he was voted number 50 of the top 50 comedy acts ever by fellow comedians and comedy insiders. 3 of Brooks's films are on the American Film Institute's list of funniest American films: Blazing Saddles, number 6, The Producers, number 11, and Young Frankenstein, number 13. Brooks developed a repertory company of sorts for his film work, performers with 3 or more of Brooks's films: The Producers, The 12 Chairs, Blazing Saddles, Young Frankenstein, Silent Movie, High Anxiety, History of the World, Part 1, Spaceballs, Life Stinks, Robin Hood, Men in Tights, and Dracula, Dead and Loving It. To their credit include Gene Wilder, Dom DeLuise, Madeline Kahn, Harvey Korman, Cloris Leachman, Ron Carey, Dick Van Patten and Andreas Vautzinas. Dom DeLuise appeared in 6 of Brooks's 11 original films, the only person with more appearances being Brooks himself. Brooks and his wife Anne Bancroft acted together in Silent Movie and To Be or Not to Be, and Bancroft also had a bit part in the 1995 film Dracula, Dead and Loving It. Years later, the couple appeared as themselves in the 4th season finale of Curb Your Enthusiasm, spoofing the finale of The Producers. It is reported that Bancroft encouraged Brooks, after an idea suggested by David G. Fenn, to take The Producers to Broadway, where it became an enormous success. In interviews broadcast on WABC Radio, Brooks has discussed with NYC radio personality Mark Simone the possibilities of turning other works from his creative oeuvre, such as the movie Blazing Saddles, into future musical productions. Specifically, in a conversation airing March 1, 2008, he and Simone speculated on what show tunes might be incorporated into a theatrical adaptation of the Get Smart property. On December 5, 2009, Brooks was one of 5 recipients of the 2009 Kennedy Center Honors at the John F. Kennedy Center for the Performing Arts in Washington, D.C. On April 23, 2010, Brooks was awarded the 2,406th star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. The American Film Institute presented Brooks with its highest tribute, the AFI Life Achievement Award, in June 2013.
Personal life.
Brooks was married to Florence Baum from 1951 to 1961. Their marriage ended in divorce. Mel and Florence had 3 children, Stephanie, Nikki, and Eddie. Brooks was married to the actress Anne Bancroft from 1964 until her death from uterine cancer on June 6, 2005. They met at a rehearsal for the Perry Como variety show in 1961 and married 3 years later, August 5, at the Manhattan Marriage Bureau. Their son, Max Brooks, was born in 1972. In 2010, Brooks credited Bancroft as being the guiding force behind his involvement in developing The Producers and Young Frankenstein for the musical theater, citing an early meeting as from that day, until her death on June 5, 2005, we were glued together. Regarding religion, Brooks has stated, "I'm rather secular. I'm basically Jewish. But I think I'm Jewish not because of the Jewish religion at all."
Work. Writer-director.
The Producers, 1968, Academy Award, Best Original Screenplay, also voiceover. The 12 Chairs, 1970, also actor. Blazing Saddles, 1974, also actor. Young Frankenstein, 1974. Silent Movie, 1976, also actor. High Anxiety, 1977, also actor-producer. History of the World, Part 1, 1981, also actor-producer. Spaceballs, 1987, also actor-producer. Life Stinks, 1991, also actor-producer. Robin Hood, Men in Tights, 1993, also actor-producer. Dracula, Dead and Loving It, 1995, also actor-producer.
Theater.
Leonard Sillman's New Faces of 1952, 1952, Sketches for a Review. Shinbone Alley, 1957, co-bookwriter. All-American, 1962, bookwriter. The Producers, 2001, composer, lyricist, co-bookwriter, producer. Tony Award for Best Musical, Tony Award for Best Book of a Musical, Tony Award for Best Original Score, Drama Desk Award for Outstanding Lyrics, Drama Desk Award for Outstanding Book of a Musical. Young Frankenstein, 2007, composer, lyricist, co-bookwriter, producer.
Other credits.
Your Show of Shows, TV, 1950 to 1954, writer. New Faces of 1952, Broadway, 1952, writer. And New Faces, the 1954 film version, writer. The Critic, created and narrated, won Academy Award for Best Animated Short Film, 1963. Get Smart, TV, 1965 to 1970, co-creator, writer. David Susskind, How to Be a Jewish Son, 1970, himself, television show guest. The Electric Company, TV, 1971 to 1977, voice of recurring little cartoon man who asks, who's the dummy writing this show? Hollywood Squares, 1972, guest star. When Things Were Rotten, 1975, co-created, writer. The Muppet Movie, 1979, special guest star mad scientist Professor Max Grassman. The Elephant Man, 1980, uncredited executive producer. To Be or Not to Be, 1983, actor, producer. The Fly, 1986, uncredited producer. The Fly 2, 1989, uncredited producer. The Nut House, 1989, co-creator. The Tracy Ullman Show, 1990, actor Buzz Schlanger. Look Who's Talking To, 1990, voice of Mr. Toilet Man. Frasier, 1993, voice of Tom. The Little Rascals, 1994, actor Mr. Welling. Silence of the Hams, 1994, actor checkout guest. The Simpsons, 1995, Homer vs. Patty and Selma, voice himself. Caesar's Writers, 1996, himself, panel member. Mad About You, TV, 1996 to 1999, actor Uncle Phil. The Prince of Egypt, 1998, uncredited, additional voices. Sweethearty, also known as Screw Loose, 1999, actor Jake Gordon. It's a Very Merry Muppet Christmas Movie, 2002, voice of Joe Snow. The Adventures of Jimmy Neutron, Boy Genius, Season 2, 2003, voice of Santa Claus, Jakers. The Adventures of Piggly Winks, 2003 to 2007, voice of Wiley the Sheep. Curb Your Enthusiasm, Season 4, 2004, actor. Robots, 2005, voice of Bygweld. The Producers, 2005, writer, producer, cameo as himself. Spaceballs, the animated series, 2008, writer, producer, voice. Get Smart, 2008, consultant. The 2000-Year-Old Man, The Complete History, 2009, DVD. Mel Brooks and Dick Cavett Together Again, 2011, himself, television special. Mel Brooks Strikes Back, 2012, himself, television special. Comedians in Cars Getting Coffee Episode 9, 2012, guest appearance with Carl Reiner, Mr. Peabody and Sherman, 2014, voice of Albert Einstein.
Collaborations. Acting.
Brooks had cast certain actors in more than one of his films. Only Mel Brooks appeared in all of his films.